We're convinced we see the world as it truly is, that we hear what was actually said, that reality is objective. But your brain doesn't show you the world, it constructs it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why we disagree so often and why that's completely normal. Your brain is not a camera. Here's what most people miss. Your brain isn't a recording device. Its main job isn't just to receive signals. It's to help you interact effectively with the world. Neurons transmit electrical impulses like a massive communication network. Images, sounds, touch, everything becomes coded signals. But your brain doesn't store the world itself. It extracts information. And that word, information, is crucial. According to information theory, information can be measured in bits. The rarer or less predictable a signal is, the more information it carries. The same principle applies to vision. Not every pixel matters. Edges, transitions from light to dark, carry the most useful data. That's why simple outlines are often enough for recognition. Your brain is constantly compressing and prioritizing, but here's the paradox. Why meaning matters more than data? If raw variation equals information, then chaotic images should be incredibly meaningful. But humans aren't machines. In the early 20th century, Kazimir Malevich painted the famous black square. Formally, it contains no more visual data than many other paintings. Yet perception isn't only about quantity, it's about interpretation. Your brain dislikes chaos. It searches for patterns, and patterns shape everything you see. Light always comes from above. Here's something surprising. Your brain assumes light comes from above. Evolutionarily, that made sense. The sun is overhead. Because of this built-in assumption, bumps and dents in images can flip depending on orientation. You're not just seeing, you're predicting, and predictions quietly shape your reality. But some assumptions go even deeper. Your personal model of reality. Some beliefs are universal, others are personal. A painter and a child recovering from chickenpox may interpret green stains on someone's hands very differently. One sees paint, the other sees illness. Your brain constantly generates predictions about incoming data. Each experience updates your internal model of the world, and this leads to a powerful psychological phenomenon. Cognitive dissonance. Psychologist Leon Festinger introduced the concept of cognitive dissonance. We tend to interpret information in ways that protect our existing beliefs. There are far more internal neural connections than external sensory inputs, so your brain fills in gaps. It prefers a coherent story over uncertainty. That's why two people can look at the same event and walk away with different conclusions. Consider the famous duck-rabbit illusion. There's no single correct answer. Both interpretations are valid, but context matters. When shown around Easter, children are more likely to see a rabbit. On ordinary days, many people report seeing a duck. Your brain selects the interpretation that best fits the current context. The world shapes your expectations. Your expectations shape the world you perceive. And the loop continues. You don't see reality, you see a model. What we call reality is a neural construction. Your brain gathers fragments, filters noise, fills in missing pieces. We believe we perceive the world directly. In truth, we experience a model of it. That's why we argue, why we misunderstand, why we're certain, even when we're wrong. The world may be objective, but perception is always interpretation. And understanding that might be the most important upgrade your brain can make. Disgust feels like an unnecessary emotion. It ruins appetite, makes the world less pleasant, and seems easy to live without. Fear, pain, and instinct sound far more important. But without disgust, humans might not have survived at all. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. Disgust, not fear, quietly kept our species alive, the emotion no one asked for. Here's what most people don't realize. Disgust isn't a flaw in human psychology. It appears instantly, before logic has time to react. The smell of rot, spoiled food, blood, filth, the response is immediate. Your body says one thing: stay away. Evolution didn't need explanations. It needed fast breaks, and disgust was faster than thinking. But this is only the surface of the story. A biological danger signal. This is where it gets interesting. Nearly everything we find disgusting is potentially harmful to the body. Spoiled food can poison us. That's why humans have an unusually strong sensitivity to bitter taste. Many natural toxins are bitter, and our taste system learned that lesson early. Blood triggers disgust for a reason. If blood is visible, something is wrong. Keeping distance is safer than investigating. But disgust doesn't stop at food or injuries, a memory older than history. There's a strange reaction that still makes sense today. Most people instinctively recoil from rats, even though few have ever seen the plague. For centuries, rats spread deadly diseases like plague and rabies. The association stuck. Even someone who keeps a pet rat rarely wants to touch a wild one. Disgust outlived epidemics themselves. And yet, we're not born with it fully formed. Why children aren't disgusted? This is the clue that explains a lot. Young children barely feel disgust. A toddler can get covered in feces without finding it unpleasant at all. That tells us disgust isn't purely innate. It's learned, shaped by experience. As intelligence develops, humans become more selective, and gradually, disgust expands beyond biology. When disgust became social, here's the unexpected turn. We feel disgust not only toward substances, but toward behaviors. Cruelty, abuse, and violence provoke the same emotional response. This isn't about germs. It's about social survival. Antisocial behavior threatens groups, and cultural disgust acted as a brake on destructive actions. It didn't make people moral. It made societies stable. But disgust is far from universal. Why gross depends on culture. Not everyone is disgusted by the same things. What repels one person can be a delicacy to another. Some Arctic cultures eat kiviak, fermented meat from seal, walrus, or reindeer. The toxins in this food can be deadly to outsiders, but lifelong exposure trains the body to tolerate it. With adaptation, disgust fades. The body learns. So does the mind. Yet sometimes disgust intensifies for a different reason. Research has revealed a clear pattern. Sensitivity to disgust increases with levels of progesterone. This hormone is higher in women, and especially elevated during the first trimester of pregnancy. That's why foods once enjoyed suddenly cause nausea. It's not a malfunction. It's protection. Early pregnancy is when fetal vulnerability is highest. Disgust reduces risky contact with potentially harmful substances, but no protective system is perfect. Sometimes disgust stops protecting and starts controlling. That's where phobias appear. In conditions like contamination fear, people avoid anything that feels unclean, even when it disrupts daily life. What's more surprising is that disgust responds to moral dirt too. After feelings of shame, people often want to wash their hands. This is known as the Lady Macbeth effect. The brain treats moral contamination like physical filth. So why does disgust exist? What feels unpleasant and unnecessary is actually one of humanity's oldest survival tools. Disgust stopped us before fear had time to act. It protected our bodies, our groups, and our future children. And that's why the emotion that makes the world harder to stomach is the same one that made human survival possible. Blue sky, blue ocean. Those phrases feel completely natural to us. Every school kid learns that a rainbow has 7 colors. In English, we memorize them as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But here's something strange. In the 8th century BCE, the Greek poet Homer wrote the Iliad. he never spared poetic descriptions. He called the sky wide, starry, bronze, vast, but never blue, not once. The sea? In Homer, it's wine dark. Why? It's obviously blue. So what was going on? The first person to seriously notice this oddity was British statesman and writer William Gladstone. He actually counted the color references in the Iliad. The clear favorites were black and white. Red came in a distant third. Trailing far behind were yellow, green, and purple. Blue was practically missing. Yes, Homer does use the word kaineos, which later in Greek came to mean blue, but he uses it in ways that don't quite match our understanding. For example, describing the eyebrows of Zeus. Some scholars even wondered whether Homer was blind, but that theory doesn't hold up. His works are filled with detailed, vivid descriptions that would be nearly impossible to invent without sight, aside from this strange confusion with colors. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This pattern wasn't unique to Greece. German philologist Lazarus Geiger studied ancient texts across cultures and found something remarkable. Clear references to blue are missing not only in early Greek literature, but also in ancient Hebrew, early Islamic, and early Hindu texts. Even Aristotle, when describing the rainbow, mentioned only 3 colors: red, green, and violet. 7 colors? That idea appears much later. It was Isaac Newton in the early 18th century who formalized the 7-color spectrum after experimenting with prisms. Which raises a disturbing possibility. Did ancient people actually see colors differently? Geiger dug deeper. He discovered that in many languages, the word for blue evolved from words meaning black, or sometimes green. That led to a radical question. If a language doesn't have a word for blue, do its speakers actually see blue? Or do they see it, but categorize it differently? Today, many tribal languages still lack a specific word for blue. Yet when researchers ask members of these communities to pick identical shades of yarn from a pile, they make no mistakes. They clearly perceive the difference. So why not name every shade? Well, why would they? Language reflects what matters to its speakers. Every culture has a word for mother because family structures exist everywhere. But color categories? Those depend on environment and need. This idea is known as the hypothesis of linguistic relativity, the theory that language influences how we perceive the world. Take the Himba people of Namibia. Their language contains many more distinctions between shades of green than English does. On certain visual tests, they can instantly identify subtle differences between green tones that most Westerners completely miss. Why? Because in their environment, distinguishing between slightly different greens might mean recognizing edible plants versus poisonous ones. Meanwhile, a 21st century American doesn't need that skill to survive. And if a culture historically never encountered vividly blue plants or animals, why would it urgently need a separate word for blue? So no, ancient people were not colorblind. But the way they divided and labeled the color spectrum was different. Anthropologists, biologists, psychologists, and linguists are still studying how human color perception evolved. But one thing is clear: we don't just see the world, we learn how to name it, and sometimes what we don't name almost disappears. Can you put love on pause? Turn it off like notifications on your phone? Decide not now and expect your brain to obey? It feels like we control our emotions. But by the end of this video, you'll see who's actually pressing the buttons. The heart has nothing to do with it. Here's what most people get wrong. Love doesn't start in the heart. It starts in the brain. And it's not magic, it's chemistry. Sexual desire is driven by testosterone and estrogen. Then comes romantic infatuation, a surge of dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline. That's why your hands shake. Your pulse rises, you feel euphoric. Your brain is switching into a reward and obsession mode, and that's only stage 1. The 3 biological phases. Love isn't one emotion, it's 3 separate biological systems. First, lust. Second, romantic fixation. Third, attachment. During attachment, oxytocin and vasopressin take over. They create calm, trust, and long-term bonding. From an evolutionary standpoint, this was essential. Raising offspring required 2 adults long before concepts like duty or commitment existed. So if this is a biological program, can we stop it? Why this person? The strangest part of love is selection. Out of hundreds of people, why this one? One major factor is scent, not perfume, biology. Inside our cells are proteins from the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC. These genes influence our immune system. Studies have shown that women often prefer the natural scent of men whose MHC genes differ from their own. Genetic difference can mean stronger immune systems in offspring. Your brain may be calculating compatibility before you're even aware of it, which suggests something unsettling. You may not be choosing as freely as you think, but if the brain starts it, can the brain stop it? What about pheromones? Pop culture says pheromones control attraction. Buy the right scent and anyone can fall for you. The problem? Human pheromones haven't been clearly proven. Yes, men produce compounds similar to pheromones found in animals, but they don't create irresistible attraction. And our vomeronasal organ, the structure that detects pheromones in many animals, is minimally functional in humans. Love isn't perfume, it's neurochemistry. And neurochemistry leads us somewhere unexpected. Love as a mild form of madness. Here's the surprising part. Early-stage romantic love can resemble a disorder. In 1999, researchers found that people in the first phase of romantic love showed similarities to obsessive-compulsive patterns. Intrusive thoughts, fixation, altered serotonin activity. Your brain becomes hyper-focused. Medications that regulate serotonin transport, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, can reduce the intensity of these symptoms. So technically, yes, love can be dampened, but should it be? What we call a feeling is actually a complex neurobiological survival system. You can influence it, you can medicate it, you can understand it. But you can't fully pause it, because love isn't just emotion. It's a species-level survival mechanism. We often think love makes us irrational, but for millions of years, it's been making us connected. So can you control love on a schedule? Not completely, but understanding what's happening inside your brain might be the closest thing to control we'll ever get.